Welcome, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I'd like to apologise at this time for the technical difficulties we've had. Hopefully that will be the last of the hitches. I'm going to rejoin the programme where we left off with Ria Douglas, who's going to talk about Mary Prince. Thank you.
Hi. Mary Prince. Born at Brackish Pond in Bermuda in 1788, she wrote a description of the brutalities of enslavement at a time when slavery was still legal in Bermuda and British Caribbean colonies. Mary was first separated from her family at the age of 11. Although she describes her childhood as a happy one, she narrates that she was too young to understand the harsh realities of slavery she would come to know in her older years. Her narrative was one of the first to describe the ugly truths about slavery in the Caribbean. She was sold to a number of brutal owners, eventually winding up in Antigua and being owned by the Prince family. Years later, she would run away, eventually ending up in England, where she became the first woman to present an anti-slavery petition to Parliament. A now famous quote by Mary Prince describes her feelings well. "It was a night when I reached my new home. The stones and the timber were the best things in it, as they were not so hard as the hearts of the owners. I light my candle in commemoration of Mary Prince."
Everyone, to join us in a moment of silence to commemorate our fallen heroes and heroines and all of those that endured the Maafa. Thank you. Thank you. Diana, over to you.
Yeah, we move into the next segment of our program. Okay, I think it's the.
It's over to you in your poem,
Right.
Diana.
Hold on. Apologies. Okay, I'm going to read a poem for you. It is a poem that I wrote after I made my first visit to the motherland. And I was so moved by it when I visited the Elmina Castle. It had a profound impact on me. And I felt I had I was inspired to write about what that meant. And I was traumatized, being in the dungeon, the slave dungeon, and just the stench of the suffering that remains in there, to see the stark reality of the inhumanity of it all. To think that there was a church above ground where people were worshipping God and believing it was okay to hold our brothers and sisters in chains in the dungeon underneath, and to treat them so brutally, was profoundly emotional. And it's something that once you've had that experience there, it never leaves you, because it brings to life the things that you only read about. It brings it all to life. And the poem I wrote is called I Made It Back, because I realized then that I need to make it back to the motherland, not just for holiday, but there's something in me that yearns to go home, because I realize that I'm not at home. I'm not at home in Europe. Wherever I am, if I'm not in Africa, I'm not at home. So my poem is I Made It Back. How painful has the journey been, tormentuous as the raging sea. But my chains are finally broken, the shackles fallen loose and free. I made it back to the motherland. The living and mental struggle was bitter to me, but my eyes are open now. At last I can truly see. Through tearful eyes, I gape at the thought that oppressed my mind and heart from afar, and at the port where my ancestors subjugated, farewelled in pain and anguish, that left a void in my mind. From its desperate release, I languished. Being born on this road and compelled to make the journey after bitterness and shock became my food for life. The realization that set in, none could make this journey for me. I had to travel it alone in order to survive. My ancestors were stolen from here and barbarized to their destinations, and I was tortured through their pain to return, reliving their annihilations. Yes, I see now why I had to come back to Africa, because their spirits still desire to be free, longing for their children to know of their homeland. They return home through you, and they return home through me. I don't believe the lies anymore, and no one can tell me now that it's wrong to be here in the land of my fathers and my mothers, where my reality began long ago somehow. It's a myth that Africa is bitterness, or that Africans don't love me. For no one can deny that home is where I, as an estranged child, ought to be. My melanin testifies against the propaganda that whirls about my head regarding Africans being poor and burdensome, destitute and dead. I made it back to the motherland, where I finally see the beauty from which I came reflected as a mirror before me. As I raise the soil to the skies, my ancestors bless me. The greatness of my heritage, the power and might that be, is evident in my attributes, abilities, and characteristics, the soul of my ancestors in me. As I sit on the shores of Elmina and pay homage to my past, I cry out with bitter sadness that soon turned to tears of joy and gladness. Thank God I'm free at last. I give way to merely existing. I made it back to Africa. My life can now begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinah. That was beautiful. Before I go any further, I would like to apologise to the viewers on Tunacheki TV for the interruption in our broadcast. We are now back streaming live, and I hope everything is working well for you. Once again, apologies. I will now hand over to Soraya, who's going to close this section of our event in prayer. Thank you, Soraya.
And good evening, everyone. This is totally unscripted, as us Jamaicans say, let the spirit take me. And I just want you to take a moment to just, and in the spirit of the living God, we thank you. When the world paused, the Luton Sankofa Committee weren't sure where we were going with it. We've weathered and journeyed the storm, and we are still here. But we thank you, our Heavenly Father, because you always knew the vision. We always had this vision that we would commemorate our ancestors with our brothers and sisters on the continent and across the world. And lo and behold, on the 25th, Thursday the 25th of March 2021, we have been able to do this. We thank you. We thank you for giving us the physical, the mental and emotional strength to gather ourselves, to galvanize and to put this program on, to link us with the very people to help us help Luton Sankofa Committee put out our vision that we always wanted to the world. Not quite how we thought it would be, but we thank you. And despite the difficulties that we've had today, we have delivered and we couldn't ask for anything more. So I just want to end and say, Amen.
Thank you, Soraya. That was beautiful. Before I introduce our guest speakers, once again, I'd like to thank African History Month for providing a platform for us to be able to be here today. So thank you again. Without you, today wouldn't have been possible. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you two giants on the battlefield of knowledge and understanding of who we are and who we were. The first speaker to talk about his Asa restoration project, I'd like to welcome Mr. Anthony T. Browder. He is an author, a publisher, a cultural historian, an artist, an educational consultant, a graduate of Howard University's College of Fine Arts, and has lectured extensively throughout the United States, Africa, the Caribbean, Mexico, Japan, and Europe on all issues related to African and African American history and culture. Mr. Browder is the founder and director of IKG Cultural Resources and has devoted the past 30 years to research in ancient Egyptian history, science, philosophy, and culture. And to talk about his lineage timeline, I'd like to also welcome Mr. Paul Obina, a warrior historian. He has designed the lineage timeline so that we can understand the historical relationship between African and European worlds. This magnificent timeline displays a 9,000-year continuum. It is designed to give clarity of both history, past, and the contentious periods of Arab and European colonization and slavery. Using the time-honored tradition of the scroll, this timeline offers 6 feet of illustrated history presented in chronological, historically cohesive order. So on behalf of the Luton Sankofa Committee, on behalf of African History Month, I'd like to welcome you both. Thank you.
Yes, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Diana, give me a signal if you can hear me. Very good. I just communicated with my colleague, Paul, who should be online as well. Paul is going to go first, talk about the timeline, and Dr. Asa Hilliard, and then I will come behind him and discuss the Asa Restoration Project. So if Paul is on, could you allow him access? Very good. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I'm just going to share the screen. Share screen. Share screen. Double up on there. Share. And hopefully we're in. Can you see that now? Can someone give me a check? You can see that?
Yes, we can see. We can see.
Okay, great. Thank you very, very much for the invitation. I'm just trying to find my presentation now. I'm so sorry about this. It's fallen off. African History Month, and then we go play from the start. Yes, the lineage timeline. I want to give you a very quick background to it. My company's called Lineage Innovations.
Sorry, we have to stop you, Paul.
Yeah.
We can't see your screen. I don't know what's happened. We can't see it.
Can't see the screen. Let's go back again. I'll go down to here. StreamYard is sharing your screen. It's saying that I am sharing at the minute. I'm stopping sharing. And then I'm going to go back onto share. Share screen again. Share screen. Let's see this. And then share. Does that come up now?
No, it still hasn't popped up.
Okay. Let me try one more time. If it doesn't share, I'll just do it off. You can see my face on camera.
Yes, can see your face.
You can see the screen, but not the screen.
But not the screen. But not the screen. Are you able to send it to me by email, and then I can quickly bring it up on the screen for you and share it that way?
Let me try one more time.
Okay.
Share screen. Share screen. It says here, sharing screen, 2 monitors, share screen. Go up on there, double click onto the screen. It says share. Any look there? Wow. That's gone. It says you're in the show. Everybody can see and hear you. Can you see and hear me now? Nope. Yes? Okay, let's have a look at this.
It looks like we can see now. We were fine. We were fine just a second ago. It looked like we could see your screen and you. So can you do that again, please?
Okay. Let me go share
it came up.
Share screen.
Yep. Try again.
Share the screen. Click on there. Share.
Add to stream. Let's remove myself.
It looks as though someone else was actually in control of the screen. There was something else going on. Wow.
This screen that we're looking at now, this is your screen.
It's my screen now, yeah?
Yep.
I'm just opening up the PowerPoint. Yep. Can you see that?
That's it. That's great. That's perfect.
Wonderful, wonderful.
It's
okay. So the introduction, this is the name of my business, the work I do. I call it Lineage Innovations. I always say to people, it's calm, connected consciousness. I remember looking at the book Afrocentricity by Dr. Molefi Asante. I always start with this because Dr. Asante talks about the twin pillars of consciousness. He says there's consciousness towards oppression and consciousness towards victory. And what I'm very much into the idea of strategy, strategic thinking. I'm about a 42-year martial artist since I started instructing it. And don't train all the time, but my way of thinking is strategic. And so therefore, I'm hoping that'll come across in the presentation. A lot of information, short time. My first timeline, I drew up in Manchester in 1987 due to a colleague, a maths teacher called Melanie Pettifer, white lady, who wanted to enrich the curriculum for the majority Black children in the school. And she said that Pythagoras' theory was used to build the pyramids. Did I have any information? So, of course, me being in a state of ignorance at the time, new to the knowledge, new to the information, gave her a very negative response. Blah, blah. So what I did, I went back to my friend's house and I drew my first timeline like this. And it was basically just to identify where Pythagoras and Imhotep lived, the architect of the first pyramid in the chronology that we generally use now. So Imhotep is there. Here is Pythagoras, this point here. And so we have an actual continuum gap of 2,080 years. This pricked my interest and hit me for years until I saw a presentation by Brother Listervelt Middleton and Asa G. Hilliard. Here's Listervelt and here's Asa G. Grant Hilliard, the third. The video was called Free Your Mind. And it was a real introduction. At the bottom here, this is what's on. If you go onto YouTube, you can see it. This introduced me to the concept, even though I didn't know it by that time, of psychohistory. Because when we look to embrace a history, there's a real need to look at the psychological impact of it, but also how are we going to use it? How will we apply it in our day-to-day lives constructively, not destructively? And so Asa Hilliard and Listervelt Middleton did this presentation. It was 1989. I got hold of it. And I like to see this. I said, this was the first time I'd ever seen African-centered data presented in such a fashion. And it blew my mind and made me wish to study. What I mean by this, these two brothers were just bantering. They had a really it was informal, it was funny, it was serious, it was all of this, and it just engaged me. In fact, when we saw this video, it was just me and my friend who brought it up from London. I stopped the video and I said, look, I know there's a group of Black people who we can show this to. And that's one of the first things we started doing in 1989, was showing this video to people. In it, there's Brother Asa's timeline, which is, as we can see, it's vertical. And I'm afraid it don't work for me. I'm not Chinese. And so I'm afraid what I did was look at it this way around. And then I got the information and I created my first, this is with time flowing this way from left to right, the same way we write in the English language. And so what I did was create a timeline, but I also had a fascination with the brain and how the brain is engaged when we are using visual aids and when we're looking at the symbols and symbolism out of Kemet, out of across wider Africa, in Europe, how these things, if we don't understand how the brain's operating in its fundamental way, we won't understand how to stimulate, but also how the brain can come under attack. And so this is a very simple thing. I came up with a phrase. I said the brain is like the earth. Why? Both have hemispheres. What goes on in the brain, we call the mind. What happens on the earth, we call the world. And whoever controls the mind controls the world. But whoever controls their mind controls their world. And as you know, in the current pandemic, there's been an attack for over a year now on the human mind. Cortisol is running crazy, and people are very, very confused in general, and the fear is having an effect. So colors on the timeline that you'll see, I'll put this later again, but you'll see colors, shapes, and pictures actually operate with the right hemisphere of the brain. And then numbers, lines, and words operate with the left hemisphere of the brain. I really do encourage you to go and find basic things on the brain hemispheres and how they operate. So what we had is a naked line going like this from 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, similar to the one I drew to prove about Pythagoras. So we're just going here to 2000, AD 2000. But the BC-AD color differentiation, I met people who don't understand about the BC-AD continuum, because if I was doing a longer session, I'd be explaining how that came about. It was actually a professor I was talking to who had studied with Dr. Yosef Benjikan and Dr. Clark in New York, and they didn't understand that continuum. Thankfully, I had a 4-colored pen, teacher's pen like this, and I did the timeline, and then I differentiated red and blue. And so we have before Christ, or ante Christum natum, or Anno Domini, year of the Lord. And then what we have here, we see the color differentiation, BC in red, AD in blue. This also represents the functions of the masculine and feminine, the masculine brain in blue, the feminine qualities in red. And so that's for another time. What happened was, let me give you a quick anecdote. What the construct of the timeline, I always call this a Scottish defeat. I'll do this very quickly. What happened was, I used to play a lot of table tennis in school. One day, the guy I used to play with, we'd gone to make a phone call. In walks this little Scottish guy, little fat guy with his belly hanging over his tracksuit bottoms. We start to play, and he beat me. He said, "Oh, you want a knock up?" And I said, yeah, okay. I was thinking, I'll kill this guy. You know, I was fit and buff back then. And then what happened was, he beat me 21-1. The only points I got was the first point when he was just watching how I played and whatever. Then he beat me 21-love, 21-love. Now, he started coaching me during the third game, and he said, "Paul, what are you looking at when you're playing the game?" I said, "I'm looking at you." He said, "Why do you think I'm going to move the table? Keep your eye on the ball." But by saying that, it meant that I needed to understand where the table was and be at one with the table. And it's the same if you play hockey, football, netball, or basketball. You always have to have a knowledge of the groundings and where the lines are. So when we're going into that game, we're knowing exactly what we're doing. I put the game of chess, which I encourage everybody to play. And then I'm just recognizing here a TV series called Game of Thrones. But just let me put this to you. Here is a construct of the BC and AD construct. This is on the lineage timeline. This is what's behind. This is the background information. This here is the usual Black history range that we get given. It's a period of enslavement. And so we only have this little bit of our continuum in this small thing. Every time we start talking about enslavement, every time we talk about colonization, every time that, I'm not saying they're not important. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that whilst we're focusing on that, we're looking at a time when Africans were truly under the cosh of Europeans and Arabs. If we go a little bit long, we have the Arab history range, which is going to go back to AD 642, 641. And once again, it's showing a short continuum. But then if I go like this, I say the African historical continuum, ancient to modern, this is our continuum. And this is what I always try to promote for people, and make sure that we're looking at that long range. And we're looking at, and so we can compare to Chinese, Indians, we can to Native Americans, etc. We know where we are in that historical continuum. Now, this is a European historical continuum, the little strip of blue there. That's going back to the foundation of Greece. So that's just to show you in comparison. At the time of the Greek Dark Ages, which is around about 1200 BC, Prince Kamwasret, the son of Ramesses II, was talking about having an African Renaissance going back to the beginning of the dynasties. That's just to put it in a context very quickly. Yeah, so the European colonization we talk about is this little strip of orange on the end here. the small strip of orange. Please keep things in mind. When we're talking enslavement and we're talking ancestry, we got to go all the way back and summon those things. Let me just get onto the thing with, got to get to Tony, because this is in praise of Asa Hilliard. I just done a little junior event. My big brother Tony has done a major piece of work down in Kemet. The corral is what I call the rational containment. Some people use the term the matrix. You know, say the matrix has you, but matrix actually means womb. So I cannot disrespect the womb by saying that. But these are the areas that we get put into. We keep running to all of these issues, and generally we get contained in this kind of mindset. So the lineage timeline, in 2017, I did a new version of it in 2017. And what happens is, I just want to give you this quickly. Obi in the Igbo language, and this is a cultural, this is one word, Obi. And what it means is, it's got these meanings: heart, wish, home, kindred, chief, lineage, soul, spirit, mind, and shrine house. So lineage, when I'm talking about, my name is Obinna, means the heart father, the father's heart. And so my son is called Obiaku, heart of wealth. So those of you from the Caribbean who know about or heard of Obia, you've got, that is one of the things we've got to bypass to connect with our ancestry, to connect with unapologetically with our spirituality. This is one of the things I know that Brother Tony is doing down in Kemet, without apology, without any form of apology. And just let me get this: the ancestral panels A, B, C towards the modern time. Just let me come out of this quickly. And if I just push this up here, we will see that on this continuum, let me see if I can pull, you'll see this black area here. And what this is this is the ancestral realm. So this is in the future. Just let me see if I can just pull the, I know where it is. I know where it's gone. I'll just pull this thing. This is the very last thing, Tony. So please get ready. If I pull this up, will this, oh no, it's still not coming up. If I can, it's not one of the, I've got it. Sorry about that, people. What we're seeing is the continuum. The red in the background is BC, the blue AD. We're coming through. These strips of blue at the top and at the bottom, those are the periods of European enslavement. But what we've got here, this young child looking forward into the future, and what we have here is a celestial sky. Thanks to Tony Browder, he actually gave me a track called They Say, a song by Duke Ellington. And it's talking very similarly. It's from the pyramid text. It aligns with the pyramid text from Kemet. But what it's actually talking about, similar to the Lion King story, that when we die, we become stars in the sky. So what we have here are ancestors that we know of. And every time, for instance, I've got to do an addition to that, which is Dr. Patricia Newton. And she's got to join this collective here as well. But there are around about 100 ancestors there. On the back, you'll see, of course, list of Alt Middleton and Asa Hilliard. I give great thanks to the spirit of Asa Hilliard. I give thanks to the access to his knowledge and information. It was my pleasure to host him in 1997, a conference called Spirituality in Manchester as part of the Education of the Black Child Conference. And wonderful, wonderful brother. I know he meant a lot to myself and to Brother Tony as well. Sorry for going over a bit, Tony. I'm passing over to you now. I've stopped sharing.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. And thank you for setting the stage and introducing everyone to Dr. Hilliard. Let me share my slides so we can jump into my presentation. Share screen. This is into Manos. Let's see here. entire screen, application window, Microsoft PowerPoint, share PowerPoint, and hopefully it will allow me in without any difficulties. It's going to take a minute. I'm used to dealing with Zoom, so Chrome presents a slightly different twist. Share screen again. This and my PowerPoint share. Okay. Has lost permission. It says Chrome has lost permission to share my screen. It's giving me a different, it's leading me someplace else. Not sure why that's happening. Not sure at all why that's happening. Let me see if I can go back to get back in this window. I am on Chrome. And
We appear to have lost Brother Brother for a second. Please bear with us while we try to get him back. In the meantime, I want to thank you, Brother Paul, for your amazing, amazing presentation. We've been using your timeline for the past 6 years to educate our community in Luton. And it has made such an impact on our community. We have Brother Browder back.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm running into the same issue that Paul was running into with me sharing my screen. I'm following the commands.
But yeah, I think, is it a presentation, a PowerPoint that you have?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so start the presentation and then click at the bottom, share screen, and then another screen should come on, and I'll let that screen into the platform.
I'll try that.
Yeah.
Okay, but can you access it now?
I
started the presentation.
Have you shared your screen?
Okay, and I have to
now
go
share
out.
you need to go out and share your screen.
I have to go out and come back in. So I shared the screen, and now I will open the PowerPoint, and you let me know if you're able to see.
Okay.
Can you see anything now?
No.
Okay, not sure why this is not working. I'll try it one more time. See if we can work around it. I'm sharing screen.
You're sharing your screen. Let me come off let me just take myself.
And see, I have this prompt up here that says Chrome has lost permission to share my screen. So I'm not sure on whose end the problem is. I hit square share again. Bear with me one more time. Let me try it again. And nothing is happening.
Okay. I tell you what, send the presentation to me quickly.
Well, it's a large file. It's a very large file. And well, if I'm going to send it, let me have a video link out. Let me take that out to reduce the size of the file. But that may be that may pose difficulty for you to retrieve it. Bear with me 1 second. Let me modify the file here, and I will email it to you directly.
Okay.
So yes, check this out. Delete that. Delete these other images. Reduce this file size.
Open the file, basically.
Okay. So let me go back out here and pull up your email address again. Okay. Save. Okay. And let me attach the file. All right, the file is 459 megabytes. So it's going to come in through mail drop, which will take a few minutes to send to you, and then a few minutes to download.
Okay.
It just went out to you, so
Right.
it may take a few minutes for you to retrieve it.
Okay, it's come here. It's come in and click download. Yes. Okay, it's downloading.
So while it's downloading, let me just give you a little background information about myself and Dr. Hilliard and the project. Dr. Hilliard was an educational consultant. He was also one of the founding members of the Association of Black Psychologists, a highly respected individual in the field of psychology, education, and history. Dr. Hilliard was one of the organizers of the Nile Valley Conference, which was held in 1984. Which just transformed my thinking about Nile Valley history and culture and put me on the path that I'm on now. Dr. Hilliard wrote the introduction to my very first book, From the Browder File, in 1989. And Dr. Hilliard passed away in Egypt on August the 17th, August the 13th, 2007 in Cairo, Egypt, after he had fallen ill at a conference in Aswan, Egypt. And so as a result of the sudden loss of my friend, I felt compelled to do something to keep his memory alive. And the opportunity to help make Asa's name a household name was presented in 2008 when I was in Egypt and was introduced to Alina Pishtakova, who had just recently discovered several Kushite tombs, 25th dynasty tombs on the west bank of Luxor, Egypt. So she was about to end that project because she had run out of funds to continue the excavations. We made arrangements for me, my organization, IKG, to assume responsibility for raising funds for the project. So the ASA Restoration Project was established on September the 28th, 2008. And what I will share with you, if the PowerPoint is ready to go, is the progress that we've made at that site since 2008. So are we ready, Diana, with the PowerPoint?
It's only halfway at the moment, so
okay, halfway downloaded. All right, I'll continue. So this site is the site of 3 tombs of Kushite noblemen of the 25th dynasty who ruled Egypt for approximately 100 years. The 25th dynasty, unfortunately, is the only period of the 30 dynasties of Egyptian history that contemporary Egyptologists refer to as a Negro dynasty, which implies that the other dynasties of ancient Kemet were not African inspired. So what we've done through the ASA Restoration Project is to document the presence of Kushite kings in Kemet who came into Kemet with the express desire to restore the land of their ancestors. So they knew that there was an ancestral connection between Kush, which is now modern day Sudan, and Kemet, which is now modern day Egypt. So these tombs of these Kushite noblemen were the first 3 Kushite tombs built on the west bank of Luxor, Egypt, where we find the largest necropolis in the world, the largest city of the dead. So our site is located between the Valley of the Kings to the north and the Valley of the Queens to the south, where we now have 3 temple tombs of Kushite noblemen, Karabashkin, Karakomen, and Nespa-Nedjet. So what I will share with you as soon as the PowerPoint has completed downloading and we can share these images, I'll show you what we've done at the site, the 3 major tombs at the site, and the progress that we've made over the past 12 and a half years via the work of the ASA Restoration Project. We are literally restoring the first Kushite tombs built in Kemet. And in the process of doing this work, we have uncovered a wealth of information about the 25th dynasty and its relationship with the earlier dynasties in ancient Egypt, going back to the Old Kingdom, which has been the reference point for much of the art, the architecture of the tomb, as well as the literary text, which has been inscribed on the walls of the tomb of the primary temple tomb that we're restoring, and that is the temple tomb of Karak-Amen. So it is a phenomenal piece of work. We have, as I said, been doing this work for the past 12 and a half years, and we are on track to complete the restoration of this site and to open the tombs to the public by 2025. We were forced to push our opening date back by 2 years due to the COVID pandemic. We were the one of only a handful of archaeologists who were excavating in Luxor, Egypt last year due to COVID. I believe there were only 3 or 4 foreign missions in Egypt last year. And tourism has dropped off precipitously. So it would take a couple of years to build back up the tourism sector in Egypt and to restore confidence in people's ability to travel the globe again. So we are looking to open the site to the general public in the fall of 2025. We'll be providing you updates, and I encourage everyone who is listening to this program this evening to follow our progress and to participate in this grand event in 2025. So I assume, Diana, it has not completed downloading yet. It's a large file, very large file. So as soon as it's ready, you can put it up on the screen and we can move forward. And I assume that you will have to advance the slides for me, and I'll tell you to do so. But let me just go ahead and give you some background information so that we don't waste any time. The tombs were built in an area in Egypt known as South Asasif, which is the mountain range which divides the Valley of the Kings from the Valley of the Nobles. We're located in South Asasif, which is south of the Valley of the Kings. And originally, this tomb was covered up by homes built by the Arab villagers who live in this area. But the process has been for several hundred years now in Egypt is that residents of villages in Egypt will typically build their homes over areas where they suspect tombs may be. And once the homes have been constructed under cover of darkness, they then dig beneath the floor of their homes looking for tombs. And once they find a tomb of a Cushite or Kemetic ancestor, they then raid the tombs and sell the contents of the tomb, the gold, the jewelry, and other artifacts on the white market to primarily European tourists. So these tombs have been desecrated and robbed for thousands of years. And when my colleague Alina Pistakova first began digging at the site in 2006, she was able to find 2 tombs that had been that were underneath the homes of residences of this village. And then a 3rd tomb, of which the ceiling had collapsed in the 1990s, which left an indentation, a large indentation in the ground. And so the residents of this village then literally used this hole in the ground as a garbage dump. So when Alina began excavating this garbage dump in 2006, she slowly began to find traces of the ceiling of the tomb of Karak-Amen. And by the end of 2009, we had finally entered the ground floor. And once we reached the ground level, we were then able to continue excavating toward the western part of the tomb, where we uncovered the 2 pillared halls. And then in 2010, gained access to the burial chamber of this priest by the name of Karak-Amen. We have since then reconstructed the 1st and 2nd pillared halls of Karak-Amen's tombs, which were totally destroyed. And then we placed a temporary roof over the restored portion of the tomb. And in the process of excavating this site, we found fragments. We found fragments from the 12 pillars that were in the first and second pillared hall of Caracamen's tomb, fragments from the walls, fragments from the ceiling. And in total, we have found 34,000 fragments, which are like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. And we are now in the process of reassembling or reattaching these fragments to the pillars and to the walls so that we can restore these objects with the texts and the images that were carved on them over 2,700 years ago. So as you can imagine, this is a very tedious process, tedious and time-consuming process. But as soon as the slides are up, I'll be able to share with you what we've done and what our vision is for the future. So Diana, can you give me some feedback and let me know where we are? And I don't even know if you're here. I don't hear you. I'm not sure where we are. Yep, I see you now. And I see a little one by you, and I assume you are still downloading the, okay, you're still downloading the file. Okay, not a problem. So again, as I stated, our goal is to complete the restoration of the 3 primary tombs that we have at our site. The 3 primary tombs are the tomb of Karabashkin, the tomb of Caracament, and last season in 2020, we were finally able to identify the original occupant of the 3rd tomb. His name is Nesba Neb Jeb, and his tomb also afforded us an incredible discovery in that we found on the floor of the tomb of Nesba Neb Jeb last fall a pyramidion. A pyramidion is the capstone to a pyramid. We had long suspected that each of these temple tombs had a pyramid built over the burial chamber, but all of that has been destroyed. And in our 14 years of excavating at the site, we had not found any trace of these pyramids until last fall when we found Nesba Nedjez's pyramidion. So you'll be able to see that actual object. We also have for the past 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 2020, we have been fortunate to exhibit many of the artifacts that we found at this site in the Luxor Museum. So in 2018, we had our first exhibition. 2019, we had a large exhibition where we displayed over 100 artifacts. And then on September the 12th of last year, we had our latest exhibition, which was the Pyramidion of Nesba Neb Jeb. So we have been fortunate to have cultivated a wonderful relationship with the Egyptian Antiquities Department, as well as the Luxor Museum. And they have graciously put on display many of the objects that we have discovered over the years. And that is allowing us in real time to share the story of these Kushite noblemen whose tombs we've been excavating for well over a decade, and we're now able to share this information with the world. So Diana, you have news for me.
I think I do, yes, finally.
Okay.
It's downloaded, and I'm going to try and get it up onto the screen right now.
Okay,
So,
great. So what I'll do is, once you get it up and open, I'll have you run through the first dozen or so slides, which cover many of the things that I've talked about. So we don't need to waste any more time going over that information.
okay.
And I'll focus on the heart and soul of what I wanted to share with the audience this evening.
Okay, so I'm going to try and share my screen with you. If you'll allow me to, one moment. Share screen. Okay, it's taken a while, but something's happening. So I'm just getting a round circle. It's buffering.
So again, while we're waiting for it to come up, and as soon as it comes up, I'll shift gears. Getting back to Dr. Hilliard. Dr. Hilliard was such an incredible person that upon hearing the news of his death, I felt compelled to honor his memory, to honor his legacy, and to honor the special relationship that he and I had for over 2 decades. And so the creation of the ASA Restoration Project allows us to do 2 things. One, to excavate and restore the information about the Kushite presence in ancient Kemet during the 25th dynasty, but also to preserve the legacy of Dr. Asa Hilliard. So we are moving into the restoration phase of the ASA Restoration Project, where we are not only restoring the tombs, but the other portion of the ASA Restoration Project is to actually restore the memory of African people, restore the descendants of those Africans who migrated from the Nile River Valley to the Niger River Valley and were captured during the Maafa and enslaved throughout the diaspora. So our job now, our responsibility now, is to restore the memory of the people who have been erased from their own historical and cultural memory, so that we can understand who we were and what our ancestors did when they were self-determining people, so that, as Paul showed you in the timeline, we aren't locked into this narrow band of enslavement, and we can go back to the beginning of humanity, the beginning of civilization in the Nile Valley, and realize that that is our authentic jumping off point. So our reference point is African people as empowered men and women, and not African men and women who are struggling to restore that which enslavers took away. So as there's been a lot of talk the last decade or so about reparations, and while that is a noble effort, I have a tendency to be extremely realistic. Living here in the United States of America, I do not expect the people who were responsible for stealing and enslaving and brutalizing my ancestors to now admit that guilt and then to apply compensation to the descendants of those enslaved Africans. So while there is a movement to demand to push for reparations for the descendants of formerly enslaved Africans, I'm also a believer in us being proactive. So what we can do is engage in reparations for ourselves. And personal reparations begins with us reclaiming our historical and cultural memory. We have the capacity to do that right now. And I am a staunch proponent of us reclaiming our memory, the memories of African people that predate our enslavement, that predate that small segment on Paul's timeline that shows us being corralled in the imprisonment of enslavement, and go back to the best of our ancestors. So if we truly understand this concept of Sankofa, this Ghanaian concept, which I recently have been able to trace to the Nile Valley, and I have a slide showing you the presence of the Sankofa symbol in the Nile Valley, we can engage in those activities of restoring that which was lost, that which was forgotten, activating that knowledge within our consciousness, and then doing what free people are supposed to do, and that is preserving this information so that it may be passed down to our descendants, to our children, our grandchildren, and all those generations who will come behind us. That is our legacy, and that is our responsibility. And we do that, we uphold that responsibility, not just by talking about the fact that our ancestors were kings and queens, because the truth of that matter is less than 1/10 of 1% of the African population were kings and queens. The vast majority of people were civil servants. They were teachers, they were healers, they were thinkers, they were builders. They were responsible for creating the civilizations that we are now able to come back and excavate through our archaeological research, and then put a greater understanding to who they were and what they did. But let us be very clear, it is the average people, it is the common people who are responsible for connecting to the memory of their ancestors and being the vessels through which their ancestors lived, breathed, spoke, and acted as agents for continuing their ancestral legacy into the present and into the future. That is the power and ability that we all possess. And it is our responsibility to marshal this knowledge forward, to make it accessible to our people so that they can begin to understand who they are, the capacities that they have always possessed, and then to be able to use this knowledge to transform their lives and, more importantly, the lives of their children. So we have been doing that here in Washington, D.C., through our organization, IKG, through our publications that I published since 1989, when I did my first book, From the Browder File. We continue this legacy through the work that I've been doing with my daughter since I took her to Egypt in 1989, and since we published her first book in 1990. So we have programs in place right now where we are teaching this information to the young and to the old so that they can begin to understand that our story does not begin with our enslavement. Our story begins with the story of the first human beings who've ever walked this planet. Our story continues as Africans walked out of East Africa into Asia, populated Asia, and then ultimately crossed the Bering Strait into North America, Central America, and South America. And another group of Africans moved out of East Africa into Western Asia, the landmass that we now call Europe, and populated Europe. So the reality of this historical restoration effort is that, as John G. Jackson said, there's only one race, the human race, and all human beings are derived from Africans. So we are, in fact, the mothers and fathers of humanity and the mothers and fathers of civilization. This information has been usurped first by some Greeks, and then Romans, and then Arabs, French, British, you name it. Everyone has profited from the legacy of African people without acknowledging the source of the knowledge which contributed to European and Arab advancement. So our job, our responsibility is not just to sit back and criticize those who have abused us and abused our ancestors. Our responsibility now is to do as Asa G. Hilliard said in that 12-part interview series that he did with Lester Belt Middleton. Our job is to free our minds by returning to the source. And the source for humanity, the source for culture and civilization has been in the Nile Valley, which is still very much a part of the African continent. So by returning to the Nile Valley, we can do, as Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop employed us to do, elevate the culture of Kemet in our historical memory so that it will be for us what Greece and Rome has been for Europeans. It is the foundation for our connection to our ancestors. It is our past, it is our present, and it is our future. So I can only assume that you're having difficulty with bringing up the PowerPoint. So at this juncture, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So we can move forward without it. It's up. It's up.
Sorry. It's such
okay, no problem. I mean, I know how it is dealing with technology. So that image is full screen. So why don't you advance through, and we'll just end with the last few slides, which show the work that we've done. So if you click on the continue clicking, continue going, continue, please continue. This is the slide that was taken in 2010 of my daughter and I, 70 feet underground in the burial chamber of Karakorum. Next slide shows you the ground level of the tomb, which is 40 feet above where we were, and this area is still some 20 feet below the ground level. This is the floor of Karakorum's temple tomb. Next slide shows you the western wall of the tomb, which we restored in 2012. The next slide shows you what that area looks like now. We have rebuilt the entire second pillared hall. Everything that you see in light colored stone is new stone that we have cut and used to rebuild the pillars and the walls. Advance the slide 2 more times. You'll see at the bottom what the site looked like in 2011 and what it looks like today. Advance it 1 more time, please. 1 more time. And this is what the site looked like in 2012 before we erected all of the pillars in the first pillared hall. And this is what it looked like in 2019 when we rebuilt everything and then put a temporary ceiling on top. Next slide. Next slide, please. This is the before and after excavation work in the tomb. You're going too fast. Hold on. I'll tell you when. All right. This is, all right. So let me see something, Diana. Hit the slide. This is the burial chamber of Karabashkin. His tomb was the first Kushite tomb built in Kemet. Next slide shows us measuring the sarcophagus, which measures 8 feet high, 5 feet wide, and 12 feet in length, and weighs 20,000 pounds. Next slide. 1 more time. In 2018, we discovered in another room in the tomb of Karabashkin, we discovered this set of canopic jars, which were inscribed with the name of Amenertis, the lady of the house. Amenertis was the wife of the king of the 25th, was the daughter of the king of the 25th dynasty. She was a member of the divine wives of Amen. Next slide shows you where we're now taking these artifacts and we put them on display in the Luxor Museum. This was our first exhibition in 2018. The next slide shows you a poster documenting our second exhibition. Next slide shows you pieces from that second exhibition, which opened in 2019, where we had over 100 artifacts that we found at the site. Next slide shows you a couple of other artifacts. 1 more time, please. These are artifacts that were found at the excavation site. The next slide, please, shows you some of the work from last year and some of the highlights. We are now continuing on with the restoration of Karakamin's tomb. Next slide shows you some of our conservators, some of our workers, inserting the 34,000 fragments into the appropriate place on the pillars within Karakamin's wall. Next slide shows you 2 of the 4 tombs that we discovered last year. So we have expanded our footprint. We now have 8 tombs. Next slide shows you our largest tomb that we discovered last year. And inside of each of these tombs, we're finding artifacts, we're finding shafts and burial chambers. So the work at the Asa Restoration Project leads to continuous discoveries every year. Next slide shows you our biggest discovery of the season. This is a photograph of the Sun Court of Nespa-Nedjed. Next slide shows you lying on the ground of the Sun Court is the Pyramidion of Nespa-Nedjed. The next, advancing 1 more time, shows you an image of the occupant, of the original occupant of this tomb, shows you his name. And one more time, advance it. We see the image of Nespa-Nedjed. It is an image which has been in the Cairo Museum since it was discovered at Karnak Temple in 1904. Next slide. So what I want to share with you in the next slide is the Pyramidion, all 4 sides of the Pyramidion in Nespa-Nedjed. So my responsibility last season was to design the exhibition for the display of this Pyramidion. Advance it 2 more times, please. And I think the next slides will show you me doing the measurements. Advance it again. This is the exterior of the Luxor Museum. This is the advertisement for the commemoration of the 45th anniversary of the Luxor Museum. Next slide shows you another promotional poster for the grand opening of our exhibition on September the 12th. And the next slide shows you the newest exhibition of the Asa Restoration Project, and that is our Pyramidion, which is now on display, sitting on top of a glass pyramid, which gives you a feel for what this object looked like when it was in situ. Next slide, please. We'll show you, this is a slide that shows you an image of the first the occupant of the first tomb built in South Asasif. This is the tomb that was built in honor of Karabashkin, who was the mayor of Waset. Waset is the Kemetic name for the city that is now known as Luxor and Karnak. There are two major temples at this location, Luxor Temple and Karnak Temple, which are connected, separated by a distance of almost 2 miles, but connected by 1,350 ram-headed sphinxes. The next slide shows you one of the sphinxes that line this avenue of sphinxes, 1,350 sphinxes that line this avenue that connect these two very important temples. The next slide shows you Karnak Temple. The image that you see is that of Karakamen. His was the second tomb built in South Asasif. Karakamen was a priest of Amen at Karnak Temple, Karnak Temple was the residence of Amen. Amen is an ancient African word which identifies the unseen presence of God, the unseen presence of the Creator who resided at this site. Advance it one more time, and you'll see another photograph of the baby brother of Karakamen. His name is Harem Aket, and he was the chief priest at Karnak Temple. And advance it one more time, and you'll see this newly discovered image of Nesba Nedjeb. So all three of these Kushite noblemen worked at Karnak Temple, the largest temple in the world. Next slide shows you something about the spiritual landscape of Waset. Waset was the capital of Kemet for over 2,000 years, and there were certain ceremonies, sacred ceremonies, that were conducted on the east and west bank of Waset. Next slide shows you a procession of the Opet Festival, which was conducted annually. It was done to renew the king's power to the Netru Amen and to reinstate his authority to rule the land, the blessed land of Kemet. That was one of the most important ritualistic ceremonies that was conducted every year in Kemet. The next slide shows you an image of Amenertis, who is the lady of the house. She is the daughter of Taharka, and she was one of the divine wives of Amen. And it was their job to conduct a weekly ceremony, which was to acknowledge this connection between the city of the living on the east bank of the Nile and the city of the ancestors on the west bank of the Nile. So the next slide shows you part of this processional. Go to the next slide, please. Shows you an image of this procession that was carried out every week, every 10 days. Led by these sisters, they would then bring flowers and place the flowers on the graves of their ancestors on the West Bank. They would bring food and water and pour libations to these ancestors on the West Bank of the Nile Valley in order to let them know that we, the living, have not forgotten them. We are not separated for them. And as long as we remember their name, as long as we call their names and pour libation, then they will continue to live, and we will be the vessels to which they would do their best work. Next slide, please. And as I'm winding down, I want to share with you where this work has led now since 2016. Next slide. I discovered in 2016, painted on the ceiling of two tombs in North Asasif. One tomb is a 25th dynasty tomb. The other tomb is a 26th dynasty tomb. This image painted on the ceiling of these two tombs may look a little faint for you, but advance it one more time, Diana, and you'll see a recreation of that image. That is the heart-shaped Sankofa symbol. Advance the slides one more time, and what you will see here is a piece of pottery that was created in Kush in the 17th century BC. That is 1900 years ago. No, it's further back than that. Gosh, that is over 2,700 years ago. Kushites had created what Egyptologists refer to as the running heart-shaped spiral symbol, which incorporates within it the Akan symbol that we know as Sankofa. Advance it one more time, Diana. And so what you see is, this is an image that comes out of the Ivory Coast, where we see the Sankofa bird standing on top of a step pyramid. So Africans in the Niger River Valley are acknowledging their ancestral origins in the Nile River Valley. And next slide shows us a replica of the same Sankofa symbol that was found in the African burial ground in New York City in the United States of America. So we see here a symbol that was created in the Nile River Valley that surfaced 200 to 300 years ago within the Niger River Valley among the Akan with their Adinkra symbols. And then we find the same symbol has been brought to America. So our next slide shows the logo of this organization, the logo of this institution. There are at least 3 different versions of the Sankofa symbol, but that symbol is a reminder to us living in the present moment that it is not forbidden to go back to reclaim the knowledge of our ancestors. And we reclaim that knowledge in the present moment. We preserve it for our descendants, and then we pass it on to them so that they do not have to reinvent the wheel, so that they understand that they are part of a continuum. And our story does not begin with enslavement. Our story begins with the story of the first human beings on the planet and the first civilization that was documented in the Nile Valley by the first human beings on the planet. That is our legacy, and that is the work of the ASA Restoration Project. So through the work that we're doing, through the work that Paula Bina is doing, through the work of Luton Sankofa, we are engaged in the process in the present moment of reclaiming the best of the knowledge of our ancestors, making this information accessible to everyone who is willing to receive it, and then encouraging you to use this information to continue the great and mighty walk of African people so that we can understand very clearly that we are the vessels through which they live, speak, and breathe, and do their best work. So we do what we do, not because we're trying to recreate an ancient culture. We are doing this because we are a continuum of this ancient African culture, and that our ancestors live in us whenever we are conscious of them, whenever we pour libation and call their names, and we are their vessels. So with that, I can officially bring my talk to an end, and you can move forward with your program. Thank you very much for your time and this opportunity. Diana, it's yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me just bring myself up on the screen with you. That was so powerful. Aside from all the technicalities, I want to tell you that when you showed that Sankofa symbol and how far back it's from the beginning, and here we are, still in Sankofa, still looking back. And it's so important for us to know we don't just look back to slavery, we look way back to find out who we are, because we're so much bigger, so much greater than that. And we've been fed a lie, and it's so important to get to the root of the truth of who we are. And I thank you so much for the knowledge that you've imparted to us, that opening up our understanding about Sankofa and what it means, and how we need to just connect with that. It's just so wonderful. It's so moving. It's so deep, and it's profound. And I thank you so much for being our guest, along with Paul Obina, with his fantastic resource, the timeline that puts it all into a visual aid for anyone who wants to really understand, and get a clear view. A picture paints 1,000 words, they say, and I tell you that timeline really says it all. It explains it all. I just want to know, we're going to go into a few minutes of question and answer. I don't know if anyone who's watching has any questions for you, but I would really like you to let everybody know about where they can access your resources, where they can connect with you, where they can get a copy of the timeline, please, so we can put it in the chat for our viewers, so we can put the links there so they can see. Please.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll type my website in the chat so that everyone will have that information. And Paul, you put in your information for where people can order the timeline.
Okay.
There we go.
That's great. Let's see.
And just in case people are interested, we do study tours to Egypt as well. We have 2 study tours planned for this year, one in late June and the other in December. Details on those tours are on our website, the IKG-info website that I put in the chat room. And you can find all the details about that and our books and other products that we have available.
Okay. Paul, would you like to say anything?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. No, yeah, I'm afraid my website is still not up. Certain reasons, but I've just put in there my mobile number and my email, and if at any time you call that, I can usually get timelines sent out within 48 hours.
Okay, that's great to know. That's great to know. We have some really nice comments. People saying it's so interesting. Great job in Egypt. It's great. Everyone's enjoying it, and we thank our viewers for tuning in. And again, I want to thank United States of Africa for hosting this wonderful African History Month. And before we move off, I'd just like to say, please do come back again. Maybe without the technical difficulties, we can get it done properly, because I'm sure everybody will want to see you again. And maybe we can take our time with a separate program, something like that. Will be wonderful. I'm sure it will be. Thank you so much for coming. I want to thank the mayor, Maria Lavelle, for being part of our Sankofa event. All the participants, Sarah Jane, Solomon, my daughter, Ria Douglas, Lorna Markland, our Director of Operations. I'd like to thank Debbie Marquis, who has been a wonderful host in spite of all the technical difficulties, and Jackie Burnett, our Chair of Luton Sankofa. I want to thank you all. And I'd just like to, if we're done, are we done? Are we done? Okay, so I'd just like to hand over to Martin. If Martin is in the house, can I add you to the stream, Martin, so you can drum us out of our Luton Sankofa segment, and we move into the next. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana. All yours.
Thank you so much, Martin. That was wonderful as usual.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you for keeping the energy up and keeping our spirits lifted. It's just so wonderful to hear you play.
That's
Now
great
we're
to
gonna
hear.
thank you so much, Martin. Okay, we're gonna now hand over to our founder of African History Month, no other than President Daniel Mambonu. I hand over to you. Thank you. We're gonna now hand over to
hello, greetings everyone. I'd like to thank Luton Sankofa team for amazing presentation, and also the Mayor of Luton for making time to be part of this event and to celebrate the African History Month with us. I also take an opportunity to thank the founding president of Namibia of accepting our invitation to be part of the 6th African History Month conference. He sent a speech that Chief and Personal Assistant to the Office of the President will read thereafter. So I'm going to begin greetings, fellow Africans, people of African descent all over the world. Today, as we celebrate the 6th African History Month conference, we turn back to the slings of time to remember and honor our ancestors who endured slavery before the Europeans came, when Africa encountered its first slavers, the Arabs, in the early 7 BC. And this lasted over 14 centuries. Yet this is not taught in African history. The African slave trade is the most tragic and disturbing episodes in human history. What our ancestors went through should never be forgotten. On this day, we honor those who endured the transatlantic slave trade, which began in 1444 AD, when the Portuguese brought a large group of enslaved Africans to Europe. And 82 years later, the Spanish explorers brought enslaved Africans to settlements that would become the United States. It is estimated that possibly as many as 11 million Africans were transported across the Atlantic, 95% of whom went to the South and Central America, mainly to Portuguese, Spanish, French possessions, while only 5% ended in the United States. However, a minimum of 28 million Africans were enslaved into the Muslim Middle East, but the Arab slavery was lethal and targeted mostly African women. Thus, it made Africa too weak, such that it could not defend itself during the European slavery and colonization. The Arab slavery unquestionably checked the population growth of Africa, was marred by excessive poaching of reproductive potential of harvested areas, placed tremendous pressure on gender and marital relationships, caused a greater economic decline, which negatively impacted Africa during the 3 critical centuries of European expansion to global domination. Since at least 80% of Africans captured from the East, North, and Southern Africa by the Muslim slave traders were calculated to have died before reaching the slave markets, it is believed that the death toll from 14 centuries of Arab and Muslim slave raids in Africa could have been as high as 112 million people. I speak today to millions of people of African descent in Iraq, India, Iran, Yemen, Syria, and United Arab Emirates, who, as a result of Arab enslavement, continue to endure systematic racism and human rights violations in the Arab world. the Arab slavers did not only march their African captives to Arabia, but also sometimes sold them to the European slavers. It's imperative to note that the European slavery was encouraged by Arab slavery, whereas in modern times, the popular image of African slavery springs from a vision of tormented male suffering under the lash of unceasing labor on some New World sugar plantation. The real face of servitude finds its focus in forced migrations of millions of girls and young women across Sahara and the Horn of Africa, captured into institutions of Islamic concubinage. While in the European world, in the European New World, the measure of a man's stature was mapped out and calibrated on the physical dimensions of empire built upon sinews of forced masculine labor. In the Islamic Orient, wealth was a reflection of prestige. Young girls were seen as a vessel of male hubris and themes of male pleasure ground and malleable material to be shaped to the master's will. There's African women slaves in the Arab world were often turned into concubines, living in harems, and rarely wives. Their children becoming free. A large number of male slaves and boys were castrated and turned into eunuchs who kept watch over harems. Castration was extremely brutal operation with a survival rate of 10%. The combined effect of this resulted in steady demand for slaves throughout the Islamic world and the continuing expansion of Islamic regimes in sub-Saharan Africa made Black Africans a major source. Therefore, invasive wars was a practice of slavery into economic, political, demographical, cultural, social, and religious life of Africa, and persisted for 14 centuries. There is no doubt that slavery was and still remains the worst crimes against humanity. Yet the Europeans and the Arabs are yet to own up to these grave atrocities or acknowledge the severity of this African Holocaust. It baffles me that the Arab slavery began long before the Islamic conquest of Africa, but it has remained relatively low level as compared to the transatlantic slave trade, and did not become illegal or abolished, and was still maintained till after the colonization of Africa. To this day, we hear stories of African women turned into slaves in the Middle East. On 21st century, the Arab slavery still exists in Mauritania and in Libya after the assassination of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. It's sad to note that the Arab slave trade was outlawed in Ethiopia only in 1935 in order to gain international support against Italian invasion. While the European slavers paid a higher price for male slaves than female slaves, the reverse was true in the case of Arab slavers. Whereas Europeans profited mainly from male labor, Arabs saw profit in sexual satisfaction and reproduction potential. Offsprings from the union of Islamic master and female slaves were born free out of respect for the child's Islamic paternity, while any offspring of the Atlantic slave trade were born into slavery. But these benign laws of Islam provided very little comfort to enslaved Africans. In 1600, the population of Black Africa was 50 million, which was about 30% of the combined population of Europe, Middle East, and North Africa. but by 1800, Africa's population fell to 20% of the total. In 1900, at the end of slave trade, the population of Africa had fallen to just over 10% of the total, and this led to the collapse of the continent, labor-intensive agricultural output. In contrast to the populations of Europe and Asia, the populations of Europe and Asia increased year to year as Africa's population drastically declined due to excessive poaching by the slavers, both Arab and Europeans. The trauma of slavery cannot be underestimated today, and today continues to impact people of African descent in the Americas, Middle East, Europe, and all over the world. On this day, I demand that the European, American, and the Arab world pay reparations for slavery. And I call an end to slavery in Libya, Mauritania, and in the Arab world. Africa will no longer tolerate slavish and hellish conditions in the Middle East. I call upon Africans to stop embarking on dangerous journeys to the Middle East or Europe, and instead unify to develop Africa, utilizing our natural resources. As if slavery was not enough, people of African descent today in 21st century have to endure systematic racism and police brutality in their daily lives. Today marks 1 year anniversary since the barbaric slaughter of 46-year-old George Floyd by Minneapolis police. But 1 year later, justice still at large, and no one has been held accountable for this brutal murder, which sent the world into protest and resounding calls for justice for George Floyd. Police brutality in the United States has continued to claim Black lives, and it's disappointing to see that George Floyd's story explains the larger African-American story of justice denied and justice delayed. As I speak now, the families of 12-year-old Tamil Rice, shot and killed by police in 2014, and Breonna Taylor, an African-American medical worker who was shot and killed by Louisville police officers at her home in Kentucky a year ago, are still crying and calling for justice, but no one seems to hear their cry and anguish. The United States of Africa demands justice for all victims of police brutality in the United States, in Brazil, where every 23 minutes a Black man is killed by police, and police brutality against Afro-Brazilians has dramatically escalated as President Jair Bolsonaro's regime and extreme right politicians encourage police violence with tough on crime discourses and policies. We demand justice for Marielle Franco, Rio de Janeiro councilwoman and outspoken critic of police violence, who was killed in 2018. Because of all men were created equal, and so are all women. We demand equal respect and recognition of the human rights of the Afro-Brazilians by the Brazilian government, because they are no lesser men and lesser women. We demand equal human rights for people of African descent in West Papua, who each day have to endure Indonesian colonial encroachments into their land, perpetual servitude, racial discrimination, and systematic human rights abuses that have denied them their basic human rights to self-govern or determine their destiny. I will not be silent until the world swings into action and brings to an end the Black genocide in West Papua, which has killed over 500,000 Papuans since the Indonesian occupation of West Papua in 1963. Finally, I'd like to pause. I'd like you to pause and reflect what our ancestors went through the 400 years of European and the 14 centuries of Arab slavery. With the commemoration of the African Holocaust Day in honor of our ancestors who endured the hell that slavery brought to Africa. The African History Month has taken an important step towards unearthing and unearthing the hidden and downplayed role of Arabs in slavery, and calls for the African history to be rewritten to reflect these realities. Thank you, and God bless you. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Daniel. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to add my sister to the stream now. Are you going to do the next introduction, Debbie?
I'm unmuted. I've sent it to I've sent it to you.
Well, okay. That's fine. I'm going to move into the next segment now, which actually is the speech from the President. It's the statement by His Excellency, Dr. Sam Nujoma, which I'm really privileged and honored to actually read on his behalf. He would have loved to have been present with us to give his statement himself, but unfortunately, due to technical issues, he is unable to do so. So he has kindly sent his statement to us so that we can read on his behalf, and I'm going to read it for him. Statement by His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma, founding father of the Namibian nation and first president of the Republic of Namibia, on the occasion of the 6th virtual conference of the African History Month, 25th of March, 2021. I am honored to have been invited to speak on the 6th virtual conference of the African History Month that serves to celebrate the achievements of people of African descent and acknowledge the contributions that Africa has made to the world's civilizations. 58 years ago, the founding fathers, heroes and heroines of the African Revolution founded the Organization of African Unity, OAU, the forerunner of the African Union. Therefore, I join millions of Africans on the African continent and those in the diaspora to celebrate the formation of the Organization of African Unity, OAU. Before I focus on the founding of the OAU, allow me to look at Africa's glorious but painful history of slave trade and colonialism. With the advent of industrialization in Europe and North America, the continent of Africa served as the ideal supplier of slaves who were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean to work on the sugar and cotton plantations, especially in the Americas. European powers at the time conquered the African continent through the force of arms and seized large portions of our ancestral lands, colonized our people, and exploited our natural resources. The brutality and notorious cruelty of colonialism led to almost total annihilation of African populations in various countries such as the Belgian, Congo, the Nema, Herero communities, and former German Southwest Africa, now Namibia. On the 25th of May, 1963, 32 independent African states met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to sign a historic charter establishing the Organization of African Unity. I personally attended this historic and memorable occasion representing SWAPO and the oppressed Namibian masses. As Africans, we should be proud that throughout the continent, our people took up bows and arrows, machetes, and knobkerries and fought against the forces of colonialism and foreign oppression. After the establishment of the United Nations in 1945, Africa's struggle against colonialism reached new heights. Pan-Africanism became the philosophy of Africa's political emancipation, economic recovery, and cultural revival. It is the pioneers from the diaspora who defined the dictates of white supremacy and gave us trust and confidence in Africa's future destiny and progress towards self-determination. I would therefore salute the pioneers of Pan-Africanism from the diaspora, among them Marcus Garvey, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, George Padmore, and Sylvester Williams, and above all, the first Black president and former slave in the Americas, Toussaint Louverture of the Republic of Haiti. The Republic of Haiti was the first independent state in the whole of the Americas after the United States of America. African leaders on the continent pursued the ideals of Pan-Africanism and mobilized the African people into a formidable anti-colonial resistance to eradicate colonialism, leading to various African countries achieving independence in the late 1950s and early 1960s. At this juncture, I would like to pay special tribute to one of Africa's founding fathers and revolutionaries, President Kwame Nkrumah, first President of the Republic of Ghana. President Kwame Nkrumah hosted the All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana in 1958 in order to express Africa's solidarity against colonialism and the fight for genuine freedom and total independence of the African continent from colonial occupation. President Nkrumah declared that Ghana's independence will be meaningless unless it was linked to the total liberation of Africa. He became one of the founders of the OAU on the 25th of May, 1963. I also salute other African revolutionaries, such as Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea, Modibo Keïta of Mali, Patrice Lumumba of DRC, Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Murtala Mohammed of Nigeria, Julius Kambara Nyerere of Tanzania, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, David Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, Augustino Neto of Angola, and others who made contributions to the total liberation of the African continent. Among the aims and objectives of the OAU was to promote unity and solidarity of the African states, defend the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and eradicate all forms of colonialism and apartheid from the face of the African continent. Immediately after its formation, the OAU established the Coordinating Committee for the Liberation of Africa, which became popularly known as the Liberation Committee. Although Tanzania had just attained its independence, the government and the people of Tanzania, under the visionary leadership of President Julius Kambara Nyerere, offered Liberation Committee premises to establish its headquarters in Dar es Salaam, and further provided shelter and training bases and facilities at Kongwa and Nashingwea to various national liberation movements in Africa. It was from there where national liberation movements, particularly from the remaining colonies in Central and Southern Africa, were trained in military strategies, use of firearms, reconnaissance, as well as in scientific guerrilla warfare tactics in order to intensify the armed liberation struggle and liquidate the remaining minority white colonial regimes in Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Sao Tome, Principe, Zimbabwe, Namibia, and South Africa. In addition, upon its attainment of independence in 1964, the government of Zambia provided all-around support to the national liberation movements from different countries in Southern Africa. It was through this support that today the people of Namibia, under the leadership of SWAPO, attained genuine freedom and independence. I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation and gratitude to the people of Tanzania, Zambia, Angola, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Cuba for their political moral, and material support to the people of Namibia during the difficult days of our national struggle for freedom and independence. I would like to particularly salute the people and government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for their unwavering support and solidarity to the people of Namibia during the liberation struggle. Nigeria, under the leadership of Murtala Mohammed, became a member of the frontline states and rendered all-round political, diplomatic and material support to SWAPO. On this occasion of the 6th Virtual Conference of the African History Month, our hearts are filled with pride as we remember the achievements of our forebears who were inspired by a collective vision, courage and commitment. Without their thoughts and actions towards reshaping Africa's destiny and making the dreams come true for the masses of our oppressed people, the OAU would not have been founded. The liberation of the African continent would not have been achieved without the support and solidarity from peace-loving countries, such as the former Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China, the former Eastern countries, Cuba, India, and other members of the non-aligned movement and anti-apartheid movement. In addition, we also pay our profound gratitude to the Afro-Asian Solidarity Organization, whose member countries rendered political, diplomatic, and material support to the national liberation movements in Africa. Likewise, we express our sincere appreciation to the anti-apartheid movements in Europe and the Americas, which provided humanitarian support and assistance to our national liberation movements in Africa. On this occasion of the 6th Virtual Conference of the African History Month, we should particularly pay homage to the government and revolutionary people of Cuba, led by Comandante Fidel Castro Ruz, who actively participated in the total liberation of the African continent. Indeed, it was the government of the Republic of Angola whose FAPLA forces, combined with the Cuban internationalist troops and the People's Liberation Army of Namibia plan, SWAPO's military wing, who launched a decisive battle at Quito, Cuanavale, where the enemy troops were defeated. This forced the minority white apartheid regime of South Africa to negotiate for the implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 435 of 1978, culminating in the attainment of the genuine freedom and independence of Namibia on the 21st of March 1990, as well as the eventual collapse of the white minority apartheid regime in South Africa in April 1994, when our sister party of the ANC, under the leadership of Comrade President Nelson Mandela, won the first ever free and democratic elections in South Africa. Today, Africans stand tall among all the peoples of the world as free, independent peoples and charting their own future destiny. Now that the African continent has achieved its political freedom and independence, we should vigorously embark upon the second phase of the struggle, namely to bring about social and economic independence. The struggle for economic independence will be long and difficult. It requires embarking upon scientific research, proper planning, and hard work. As we are all aware, the African continent is endowed with abundant natural resources. Our economic strength depends substantially on our mastery of science and technology. It is this very same mastery that enables any country's citizens to fully exploit its natural resources and wealth. For Africa to succeed, we must join hands and work as a team. It is important that we tap on the expertise and financial capital of our brothers in the diaspora and embark upon strategies which promote manufacturing and adding value to our natural resources. It is only in that manner that we will be able to create wealth, enhance economic growth, and improve the competitiveness of our economies in the international markets. I believe that one of the effective strategies to reach our goals is through educating and training our youth, especially in the scientific fields, so that we can produce our own engineers, scientists, and other technical personnel who will play an active role in the industrialization and modernization of our economies. Thus, our efforts to promote continental integration must place education of our people at the top of our priorities as key elements in addressing development challenges. As Africans, we have a responsibility to promote peace and security on the continent, because when peace is restored, Africa as a whole stands to benefit. We must therefore consolidate, guard, and defend our hard-won freedom, democracy, peace, security, and political stability. Thus, it is imperative for our governments to support the efforts of the African Union Peace and Security Council in order to maintain peace and stability and enhance economic development on the continent. Against this background, I call upon our youth to strengthen their bonds of unity and solidarity, and to remain vigilant and ready to defend the territorial integrity, as well as the airspace and territorial waters of the entire African continent against foreign aggressors, whose foreign policy is premised on an axis of strategic interests, which include, among others, to secure strategic minerals on the continent, as they are now bankrupt. As Africans, we must unite, because it is only when we are united that we can successfully enhance the total integration of the continent with one defense force, an African central bank, a single African currency, and a single passport. As I always say, a united people striving to achieve the common good for all members of the society will always emerge victorious. Long live the spirit of Pan-Africanism. Long live the African Union. I thank you. That was the speech from His Excellency Dr. Sam Nujoma, founding father of the Namibian nation and first president of the Republic of Namibia. At this point, we shall move into our next segment, which is none other than His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Shishala, who is the GPAN International Disability Rapporteur of the people of African descent with disabilities. I will now bring you online, Ambassador, and I hand over to you. Can you unmute your mic, Doctor?
I was just coming on to say he's muted.
Yeah. Are you able to unmute your mic? You're still muted. We can't hear you. I think there's a little icon in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you click on that, that's it. I think, oh, no, try again. Can you speak now? Say something. Oh, it's muted again. Try again, please. Okay. Okay. Now you're unmuted. That's good. Can you try to say something? The screen appears to be frozen, but you're certainly unmuted now. We're having technical difficulties. I don't think we're going to be able to proceed. It keeps going from mute to unmute. So I think the next thing, no, it's gone. I think we'll have to move into our next part of the program, and maybe Dr. Shishala. Let's have a look. I think maybe at the stream. Let's try him again. No, he's still frozen. Okay. I think we're going to move into our next part, which is Chief Elder Osiris Akebala, Chief Elder Osiris Akebala of the Pan-African International Movement and the Sankofa Repatriation Movement. Born confined in the USA, the offspring of our enslaved African ancestors, attended high school at Jones High School in Orlando, Florida, earned a AA and BA degree at Valencia Junior College and a BA degree from the University of Central Florida. His major topic of study, sociology, political science. Profession to date, a Garvey revolutionary fighter to obtain repatriation, freedom from America. He had the honor to work alongside such notable past and present Black leaders, such as Roy Wilking, Executive Director, PF, the NACCP, early 60s, Roy Innis, Executive Director, the Congress of Racial Equality Organization, the early 70s, Minister Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam, late 70s to early 90s. He had the honor to meet A. Philip Randolph, organizers of the Sleeping Car Porters Union. He also had the honor to meet Dr. John Henry Clark at a core conference in the mid-70s. And he had the honor to meet Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, to name a few that he does remember crossing the civil rights battle path in the past. And he was born May 28, 1937, and he is proud and honored to be our guest today. Chief, I now ask you, I hand over to you. Welcome.
Hotep, sister, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm blessed today. I'm very blessed.
All right. I'm so sorry about the ambassador. I was looking forward to hearing from him.
Yes, but he's had a number of issues, and like many of us today.
Right. It's I don't know what's the problem is. It seems like they don't want this program to go on.
Well, you know, it's because of who we are.
Yes, I'm very aware of that. But we must continue on, though.
Absolutely,
the struggle is too demanding.
Yes.
To let those who try to do anything to prevent it to be successful.
Absolutely. I agree.
All right.
All yours.
All right. Well, I'm going to have a few seconds to get involved here to get my mind synchronized with what we are about to hear. What I would say to our people starting out is that we're living in very serious and complicated times. So serious and so complicated until I'm of the mind that most, if not many of our people, don't realize what time it is in reference to Africa and Black African people. And I put emphasis on Black African people, and it really seems to rub some of us the wrong way, but that's the way I speak. That's my frame of mind in reference to our people, because I'm totally aware of the enemy. And today and time, you have so many, irregardless to ethnicity, may claim to be who we are. So I draw a distinction by emphasizing with pride when I'm speaking and when I'm making reference to our people, it's not anybody, it's the Black African people. And you can have your issues about what constitute color or the shades of whatever in reference to living beings as we are. But my question to you who have problem with the emphasizing of the shade of our pigment that the oppressor has so labeled it to be, I'm aware of that. But my position is this. If you have a problem with me emphasizing the pigmentation of our skin, to leave all doubt in terms of whom it is that I'm making reference to or speaking about, then do this. Let's remove the entomological identification placed upon our pigment by the oppressor. Move it out of the way. The labeling of it I'm speaking about. Move it out of the way, which is not really going to move the natural pigmentation of our skin. How will you identify ourselves if you're going to take away the shade of black, of dark, of the night? What is your labeling to make the distinction between us and them? Because I'm not satisfied with the melting pot theory. I know who we are and from whence we come. I have no embarrassment of being referred to myself as being black. Because what comes with that blackness when you are in the knowledge of who you are is proudness. You don't allow any and everybody to determine your state of mind about you, Black African woman and man. So over the course of my discourse with you today, you will hear me referring many times about us as being Black and African. You have a problem with that? What you might need to do is just click off your computer, get up and leave, because I'm not changing. I've been around for a few times, and I'm serious about us as Black African people. And I have been involved with the ancestors to the extent that some Tom, Dick, and Harry is not going to come along and trip me up to have me emulating whom I know I'm not. So if your mind is not prepared to receive the divine truth of which I speak, then you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And what make it the wrong place and wrong time is because I'm here. And I put my seriousness about Black African people, about Africa, and about our needs to be compared with anybody else who come along making claim to be Black and African. Because I know over the period of time, the evilness and the cunningness of the oppressor. I know the moment that he invaded our most ancient of ancient African ancestors' space, his mind began to click in terms of how he can flip the script on our ancestors, because they saw the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding that they had about the universe, about life, and about living. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with this guy with a history of oppressing Black African people. Now, I am not one, I guess it comes with age, who spend my time anymore dealing in our past, coming up with periods of time of celebrating those who have gone on before us. No pun intended, nor disrespect intended. I honor my ancestors. I revere them to the level they need to be revered. But I also know if I am to really be serious and conscious of the fact of their need for the honor they so deserve, is that I have to leave the ritualistic and ceremonial aspect of a showing of appreciation to our past ancestors and get about the business of making the present in such a way it prove to you and to them our honor of them. So how we are today and what we do today and how we think today and how we believe today has a reflection on those we may claim to be so honorable towards and so worshiping of and praising of that lived in the past. That's not me today. Black African people, open all of your eyes. The sense of sight you have and now guide you can deceive you. The sight of the mind is what really focus in on the truth, the divine truth about you and about all of those who are out to deceive you. And what we must always remember and understand is that white folks lie. They are liars and deceivers. And their focus on who to deceive and lie to happen to be the Black African people, because they know if there is a race of people who has the qualification to stop what they're doing in their evil ways, it's you, Black African woman and man. Once carry the reputation of a goddess and godliness, you. But something happened to us to the extent that I now has to inform our people that there are enemies in the camp of the Black African race. They are those whom the oppressor has invented to become and act as the Negro. Oh, yes. Don't forget, I speak to you confined in America, having yet, as we all, to taste the nectar of freedom. And it seems as if, hear me, Black African people, it seems as if there is a psychological void in our people to the extent that we are reluctant to acknowledge the fact that we're still not free. We rather pretend to be so than to get about the business of making it so. And therein lies the problem of the Black African race. You can't be anybody. You can't go anywhere and get respect if you are not moving with the companion of freedom. That's your power. That's your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. The understanding that gives you the connection to the ancestors. We've lost the grace of the nature of our being. We no longer carry the bit in our mind that allows us to know that you wear the birthmark of God. That thing we refer to as complexion, that shade that many of us now who become so sophisticated to the extent to speak out against the shade of our pigment, and has problem with many of us who do not let the oppressor dictate to us how we to deal with ourselves. Out trying to convince Black African people that there is no such thing as blackness. That is the case, then there is no such thing as darkness. If that is the case, then there is no such thing as nightness. And if that is the case, the universe don't even exist, because it is the embodiment of the birthmark that you are now carrying, your blackness. That is your power, beloved sisters and brothers of the Black African race, whom I hesitate not to indicate to you who we are. The universe, the garment of God, the darkness that extends into infinity. It is the omnipresence the omnipotence, the omniscience of existence. That's the God of infinity, the God of energetic intelligence. And you going around trying to teach our people to look upon our blackness as something that is not real? No, no, beloved, do not fall for the okie doke, as they say anymore. Praise who you are. And let no one dictate to you how you are to identify yourself. And if you're using a term that the oppressor have lashed onto you, make it work for you and nobody else. Because the reality of all of our situations in life is that the universe, the spatial existence of infinity, consists of nothing but dark energy. It carries the sperm of everything that lives. And it is that blackness, that darkness, that perfect night that gives birth to light. Light, whom we have been indoctrinated to worship, and blackness, darkness, whom we have been indoctrinated to stay away from, to label as evil, is what have us as we are today, labeling as we are without the natural companion nature has designed us with, and that is freedom. Nothing, nobody, or anything, beloved black African people, trumps freedom. If you're not free, then you're in confinement. If you're not free, then you're not strong, but weak. If you're not free, then you know not what God is. And if you're not free, you have no knowledge of thyself. Freedom is what must be at the top of the voice and the consciousness of black African people today. Nothing else. That is our whole card. That is our avenue to our elevation again. You cannot depend on the oppressor to inform you about the truth about you, black African people. He's gonna lie to you every time. Well, Chief Evans, why is that? Because he has had the opportunity to see you in the state of your glory. When you were at the pinnacle, the apex of your divinity, this devil saw you. And right there on the spot, made a decision that he was going to pleasurize everything about you and flip you and have you becoming and behaving as he does. Because he knows that would be the sign of your weakness. We must today, sisters and brothers, take on the image, take on the identification of freedom. Because without it, there will be no reunification of the black African nation. Without it, Africa remain to be raped by the raper, the oppressor. And without it, all the good things you say about yourself and about Africa become of no avail. Because without freedom, you have no power. Make claim to owning in and everything you so desire. If you don't control it, you don't own it. And you can't own it and control it without you having freedom. Journey with me for a moment. No. Truly. Move any and everything that is not in your favor away from your mind. Because I want you to take a journey with me. You see, when I deal with the ancestors, I have been elevated to the level whereby I'm able to challenge them. I am able to remote view all that they have gone through. And you have that ability to do so as well. So move in it and everything that would interrupt you from taking a journey beyond your mind. Did you hear what I just suggested to you? Because in order for Africa to become for the Black Africans, which would be pleasing to the ideology and philosophy of the Honorable Marcus Garvey, we must hold and revere Mother Africa at the level whereby we must have the knowledge of knowing why it is that Africa must become for the Black African. We must also be able to communicate and to see what our most revered enslaved African ancestors had to go through to accomplish what they did. Oh, yes, they did accomplish what is needed for us to acknowledge today, our right to freedom. They deserve all honor and respect for having the power of endurance, because you have to, if you take the journey with me, be able to go back in time, look into their eyes, into their mind, and begin to take the walk that the Honorable Chancellor William informed us they had to take at the time of the so-called enslavement roundup. You and I have to be able to walk that track with them, see them and their bravery and their endurance, as the Honorable Chancellor William laid it out to us as they were walking overland back to the seacoast of Africa because the devil had penetrated so far inland in their efforts to kidnap our African ancestors. And I put emphasis, beloved, on kidnap. The devil is a liar and a deceiver. He leads you to believe that he was rounding up grown folk, grown Africans. No, it was our children of the time who grew into becoming our ancestors of this time. They went to kidnap, and I put emphasis on kid now, our African ancestors. As the Honorable Chancellor William has indicated to us, that is the reason why their mothers would not allow them to leave, so they volunteered to make that journey across the land to the seacoast. But what the devil don't tell you in his so-called dilapidated history is that many of our ancestors chose death over slavery. But yet many knew they had to survive that track. They had to survive the Middle Passage so you and I can be here today to confront that enslaver ancestors. They've been the oppressors to us today. About what it is that they had done to our enslaved African ancestors, and even all of the horror, all of the misdeeds, all of the rape and mutilation that took place against our children ancestors at the time. They had the spirit, they had the mind, they had the courage, they had the effort to endure all of that evil. Proof and point, I'm here talking to you today, who is the descendant from their loins to where I am now. That's why I acknowledge without shame to be in confinement here in the belly of the beast you all refer to as the USA. Because I carry the bit of truth in my mind that allows me to know that I am a proud Black African with the obligation to deliver freedom back to Mother Africa, to free our enslaved African ancestors, they who have made it possible for you and I, regardless of where you're residing, to have the responsibility to confront this devil and demand the reparations our enslaved ancestors has earned. No act of begging. That's what belongs to you. But you got to go back and embrace the ancestors. You have to be there to see what it all was about. Damn what they write about. You have to go there and experience it. And when you do, nothing will take the place of the knowledge that comes to you of the reason why it must be all about freedom for the Black African people and for Mother Africa in order for the world to change. You see, that Luciferian human being, as I refer to him, I give him all kind of derogatories and yet truthful names to be described about him and them, because they, beloved sisters and brothers, happen to be the personification of evil. Nothing I'm making up. Look at the condition of Africa today. Look at how they saw to it to scatter us to the four cardinal points of the earth. All because they know if that black power would ever come to the realization of what the unity of that power would mean to the world, he will be doomed. So share with me, why do you think when that devilish white man, oh yeah, let me pause a moment here and let you know that I am not a prison of this devil's religion. I understand and I know what God is and not who he is, what it is. And I have the freedom of mind to a certain extent to express myself without hesitation in dealing with the truth that I share with you. So I'm not going to bite my tongue just because some of us has gone through the invention state of becoming a Negro African, or a Negro American, or a Negro wherever the region you find yourself living in. All of those are signs of our decline. You did not start at the bottom of any stagnant pond. That's Darwin stuff you now have embraced. Your commonplace, your divine place rests at the apex of living. Life give it to you. Nature designed it that way. So where we are today, we are in a declining stage. We are falling from where we come. The devil preaches to you, you need to do all you can to try to ascend. That's his thing. Y'all all right? Because I am. There is no confusion in me about what God is and what our mission is as Black African people. My obligation, my responsibility is to try and get through to all of the morass that devil has put in the way to suppress your divine mind and give you the profane mind he has created for you. Therefore, I inform the Black African people, behold Africa and Black African people today. Where's your divinity, Black African woman and man? The sum total of you comes up to be one. The rule and the law of the universe based on opposites. Yet that opposites come together as being the one that represents there is only one divine essence. One God of eternity. One God that covers existence. having no beginning, no time to end, vibrating and gyrating with all of that power and knowledge there for you to siphon, Black African woman and man, because what? You carry the birthmark of God, and you have allowed that devil to take that knowledge away from you. Now look at us now. You run around on a vehicle of illusion, spinning around in fantasy. Don't even know what constitutes reality or not. And now you being so susceptible, so gullible, until you eat up so-called virtual reality and runs away from natural reality. And the natural reality of our situation is that we got to get up off of our behind and demand our freedom. Well, how is that going to be, Chief Elder? By you coming to the realization of being submissive and obedient to the instruction the ancients of the most ancient of our ancestors left with us. Well, what is that? Know thyself. More wisdom in that instruction than you can imagine. Know thyself, Black woman and man, and you'll be on your way back to the pinnacle from which you have fallen, the pinnacle of freedom. And I will keep emphasizing, freedom is power. We've lost our power. So let me make it plain to you, my sisters and brothers who did not make the middle passage journey. The responsibility to confront this devil about what is owed to our enslaved African ancestors fall on all of us, not just the diaspora African. What is that? Our enslaved African ancestors made it possible for us to confront this devil about the reparation they have earned for us to be demanded by all of us. You want your freedom? Reaccustom yourself to dealing with solutions that we're bringing about. We as Black African people run from the solution to our problem. Matter of fact, hell, we get pissed off at those of us who have ascended to the level that has no more embarrassment about knowing what we know and sharing what we know with our kith and kin, even though they, in most of our ignorance, are reluctant to accept that which is divinely true. But yet you run around making claim to be goddess and gods. How in the hell can that be when you have not a friend relationship with freedom? Now, I'm going to keep preaching it to you, but not in the religious sense of the word, but in the sense that it is required for our liberation. Take a look at me. As you can see, I haven't just gotten here yesterday. And I would like for you to know, traveling that journey to this point in time, I didn't waste it. At an early stage, the ancestors informed me of who I am and what it is that I must do in order to assist and bring about the liberation of Africa and Black African people, because they knew of our weakness that has caused our decline. And if you are serious about what you may claim to be serious about, which is having a United States of Africa government to govern all the people, which means that there has to be a continental government. If you are serious about the loving of each other, then you shall know there has to be a reunification of the African nation. Can be done no other way. And if you are serious about having Africa to be again, yes, again, for the Black African, freedom has to be our goal. Otherwise, you're shucking and jiving, not God, but yourself. And the end results will always be, and I must beseech you, behold the state of condition of Africa and Black African people today. That's what you get when you shuck and jive about making claim to be free when you're not. Freedom is nothing you could wish on. Was that the way it was taken away from you? Come on, beloved. If someone takes something you love and you need away from you, do you go back begging, asking them to please give it back to you, and you expect them to do so? If that was the case, they would never have taken it in the first place. If they took it, you has the obligation to take it back. There are so many things I need to share with you that relates to us obtaining our freedom, what will bring about the solution to our problem. But hell, wisdom tells me, which come through the instructions of our most ancient African ancestors, the divine living beings, that no way in hell will I be giving off the sign of wisdom if I make an attempt to give to you what it is we must do to solve our problem. That's something that is for only the serious, the divine mind, the Black nationalist Pan-African mind is to be privileged to, not the world. Yeah, that's owned by the oligarchs. That devilish, satanic, Luciferian human being. And we who made in the journey of the Middle Passage know very well who our enemy is. So you don't go splurting out the solution to our problem on the World Wide Web, which he controls. Does that make sense? But then because of your shortcomings, Black African woman and man, because of your indoctrination of reluctancy to deal with the divine truth and those who brings it to you, you end up developing dislike for the one who has the knowledge to punch you the way home. And you mean to tell me that's a spirit of a goddess and the godliness of your partner? Black African woman and man, you've been the power of the nation. Why do you, and you have to do this, thank that devil in his plan to destroy the Black African nation knew who it was to be he had to get through to and change. Not the black man. That's expected for you to expect him to zero in on. He didn't have that in mind because he's had soul and learned to know where the power resides within the black nation, within the black family, within our blackness. You, Black African woman, hold the destiny of the Black African nation.
Amen.
You.
Amen.
You think that devil gonna let you know that? No, no. You think I got that from reading his books? No. Where did you get it from, Chief Elder? Remember what I just suggested to you? We must learn again how to channel, how to remote view and travel, teleportation, and all of those mental athletics, calisthenics that reveal the gloriness and verification of your divine spirituality, which you no longer know how to define anymore. Devil comes and teaches you and educates to indoctrinate you to believe that a spirit is about a ghost. Your spirituality is confined, is locked up in the attitude and the behavior you display. Act divine, think divine, be divine, and recognize the power that comes with such knowledge and such state of mind. Your spirituality comes from your mentality. Did you hear what I just shared with you? Let me say that again. Because the devil has misled you in a lot of things. Your spirituality comes from the state and quality of your mentality. As your mind, so is your spirit. I'm giving you some divine information today here. Take it or leave it. I'm obligated to give it, to share it, not to tell you anything. That's the devil's way of doing it. I share with you what has been given to me to share with you without condition. Because I'm wise enough to know when I have complied with the instructions of the ancestors, don't get in the way. You've done what you've been commissioned to do. Now it's on those you have given the truth to in terms of how they're going to respond to it. As I often share with you on this internet, I'm not here to be your buddy. And if you're seeking friendship with me, you're going to have to show me that you understand the power of that relationship. I'm going to leave you now. Not that I'm at the end of what I need to share with you, but I have to leave you now. And I don't know what I have thus far shared with you may have made some of you angry with me, may have made some of you sad at the truth that I share with you. And what gives me consolation may have made some of you to be elated and joyful over the fact of the divine truth I have shared with you. But either way, in my going and in my coming, don't know how long more it would be, but as long as I'm allowed to be, I will share with you, my beloved sisters and brothers, the divine truth, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not. It's not on me. What's on me is to give it to you, to share it with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, in closing, the power that is going to lead to our liberation is when we develop the wisdom to know why it is that we must never allow this devil to get away with the evil they have done when they created that institution called child slavery. Not just slavery, but child slavery. What that mean? Our ancestors, no more than children at the time. Why do you think they were able to pack so many of us in those little small ships? There were no big, giant, burly black folk. They were children at the time. He preys on. Oh, come on, you're about to get me to go into a whole different. Huh?
That's another thing. Yeah, we could go on and on and on.
Yeah. So I'm about to leave you now, but know that you have been addressed by somebody who know who you are and love you dearly.
Thank you.
So let us decide to join minds together and let this devil know he's not going to get away with the crime that he has committed, which is child slavery, and he owes to our enslaved African ancestors reparations. It is those reparations that carry freedom for Africa and Black African people. Hotep.
Thank you so much. So much. Thank you so much, Chief Elder Osiris. Thank you.
I bow to you. I bow to you, sister.
Thank you. Thank you for your words of wisdom and enlightenment and so much to think about and to get into our spirit and to act upon. Like you said, it's not just about commemorating, but it's about doing what we need to do to make our ancestors proud of who we are. Otherwise, there's no point. There's absolutely no point. I get it. I get it.
All right. All right. I bow to you, sister. I bow. I bow. I'm humble in your presence. I know who you are.
Thank you.
All right.
So that's what we're about. And it's about the next generation coming behind us.
Yes.
We need to set it up for them to come into it and move with it. That's what it's about. That's what we're about here. That's what we're doing here right now.
I'm humble.
It's all about them. So Thank you so much again. And as we come into the close of our wonderful program today, it's been an honor to have you, sir. And I'd just like to pay respects to the rest of our guests today.
Yes.
We've had today, from the beginning, we've had Martin, who again is going to close us out with the drumming, our libation.
Yes,
wonderful,
yes.
wonderful.
Good.
To start the service, we've had our Dr. Kevin Washington to speak about the African Holocaust. We've had Adam Hudson talk about transatlantic slavery and how it impacted the USA and the African Americans, and also playing the djembe drum for us. And we've had the mayoress of Luton, Bedfordshire, come on and open our program for us, as part of our civic service. We've had Councillor Jackie Burnett explaining about our Luton Sankofa UK organization and how we, the history of how we started and how the spirit moved for her to begin this thing. And as she felt led to throw it out to the community, the right people responded. The right people came forward.
All right.
This is who we are now. We are Luton Sankofa UK.
All right.
And everything is just moving in the right direction and in the right way.
Yes.
And culminating in what we are now. And so it's wonderful. We've had Lorna Markland, the Director of Operations, and the children come with the candle commemoration, talking about our ancestors, bringing them to life for us, making us realize they were human. They're not just names, they're not just numbers, as our oppressors like to make us statistics. They're not just statistics, they're human. And they felt the pain that we relive when we relive it. We relive it through the injustices. We relive their pain. And this is why we have to come to another level. We have to move forward. We have to, like you said, we cannot allow them to continue to get away with the things that they do to us.
Yes.
Otherwise, our children will never move on. So it has to stop. And we have to ensure that it stops, And then we've had the prayer from Soraya, who's come in to impart to us and to share with us. We've had Anthony Browder, Mr. Anthony Browder, with his ASA restoration project. It's just so marvelous what he's been able to unearth and reveal to us about Sankofa. Even imagine how far back Sankofa goes. We had no clue. And the ancestors enabled him to unearth that for us. And to let us know that they are with us.
Oh, yes.
It is just amazing. It is phenomenal. And then Paul Obinna with his timeline, giving us the visual representation of it all. It is just amazing. We have everything at our fingertips.
Yes.
So nothing should hinder us.
Yes.
Nothing should hinder us. We have everything we need within us.
There you go.
We have it.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And we're rich.
Certainly.
and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. And of course, we try to have Ambassador. Without forgetting His Excellency. Oh my goodness. Sammy Juma. The speech that he provided for us. My goodness, it was an honor to deliver that on his behalf. How powerful. And so wonderful to know that he's with us, and he believes in what we're doing. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yes.
And sadly, we couldn't have Dr. Shisala to give his talk, but again, maybe another time. And then yourself, Chief Elder. Thank you so much.
Honored sister. Yes.
Again. So at this particular moment, I just want to say that this year, the past year has been very difficult for a lot of us. And today we've been commemorating our ancestors, and a lot of us have lost family all over the world.
Oh, yes.
We've lost so many family in so many atrocious ways this year. We've lost them through COVID. We've lost them through vaccines. We've lost them in so many ways. And I just want to, send my condolences out to our family, right across the world.
Yes.
Our family across the world who are grieving right now. I know I'm grieving. I've lost friends just this week. It's extremely sad. Many of us are in the process of grieving, but let today be a day of tribute to them and what they have meant to us.
Oh, yes.
What they have meant to us, and how we're going to carry them with us forwards.
Yes.
In everything that we're doing, and we'll never forget them because they're a part of us. They always will be. And I want to encourage everyone who's grieving right now to take courage.
Wonderful. Yes.
Take courage. We're going forwards, and we won't stop until we achieve.
Not at all.
Until we achieve what we want to achieve.
Good enough.
So without further ado, I'm going to bring Martin. Oh, sorry. I have one more thing, administrative duty, which is to thank our sponsors for today, who made it all possible. Tunacheki TV, streaming us around Africa and around the world.
All right.
Via YouTube channel, and the Council for Ethiopian Diaspora Action, and Asaki Real Estate. I want to thank you all. And last but not least, our President Daniel Mwambonu for
most certainly, my young son,
making this occasion
possible. Yes.
Without his vision and his determination,
I know.
We wouldn't even have this. So,
yes. May he always be protected. Yes.
I can't say it, but you know, it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right.
So I'm going to now bring Martin on.
Hotep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, Debbie.
Thank you.
So over to you, our hostess for the day.
Yep. Yes, so let me end by saying, once again, thank you to everybody who was very patient with us while we had all of our technical issues. Who knows, next time we might be able to do this again and we're all on the same continent. Who knows? So it's an absolute pleasure to be here and to be part of this. And I want to thank Daniel again for hosting us on his African History Month platform, and to the United States of Africa for hosting us once again. So on behalf of the Lieutenant and Kofa, I just want to say our thank you.
Okay. And with that, I think we'll say good night or good day to everybody, whichever part of time of the world you are in. And thank you once again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.